back to another session on effective communication skills. And today we will be discussing some strategies and tips and tricks how you can be an effective communicator when you will hit the professional life and when you will start working, how you can be an effective communicator. Good afternoon, Tarun, Kansha. Good to see you again. Okay, so can we start the session? All right. So we have already discussed that how you can be an effective communicator, why effective communication is different from communication. We know how to communicate, but we really communicate effectively. So we have discussed that what is communication, what is effective communication, and why it is important at your professional life and in your personal life. And how today we'll be discussing how we can improve and how we can be an effective communicator, right? So because we know the power in communication begins with the tone, pitch, pace, non-verbal communication that we call body language, right? So we'll be discussing all these things together. All right, and in the end, I'll be sharing few scenarios where you have to apply your effective communication to solve those problems, to solve those conflicts, right? So how and when we use our effective communication skills to solve particular problems or to resolve particular conflicts, right? So at the end of the session, I'll be sharing few scenarios. Okay, so let's get into it. So today we'll start with that I believe 7 highly effective tips that I believe and people believe, and we had articles and research. People had done so much research on these things that these 7 tips are highly effective when it comes to good communication in the workplace. So, as we know, the power in communications, like it depends on our tone, the pitch we use, the pace that we use, along with the words that we use. Like we discussed in the another session that, words are only 7%, body language is 58%, right? So how we can use and improve our body language and how we can use the effective and appropriate words, right? And how we can use them and change the entire direction of the conversation. So it's no secret, the importance of effective communication at work, in your professional life is paramount, right? So communicating in the workplace, it actually helps us to understand our fellow employees or subordinates, our managers, our reporting managers, our co-workers, their viewpoints, and we can resolve differences and we can just lead to building respect and trust among each other, right? And we can avoid so many issues in business, at workplace, when we have a good communication skills or effective communication skills. And if there is a conflict, if we know how to handle it just with effective communication skills, so for that, all these things, we need certain tips. What do you think that to solve any conflict, to solve any dispute, what type of communication skill you need that will actually help you to solve certain conflicts at workplace? Like we have discussed that words, tone, pitch, pace, non-verbal communication, among all these, which one is the important and vital? Anybody? Okay, so see, conflict can arise from simply being misunderstood, and therefore professional relationships can suffer, right? You can have consequences if you have not used or you've been misunderstood by your fellow employers or your colleagues, right? So the moment you open the lines of communication by listening and respecting other people, respecting their opinion, right? So basically you have to listen and listen to understand them, listen to their perspective, listen to their opinion, and you have to respect it, right? So the effective communication at workplace starts with active listening, right? Listening with empathy, listening with, when you try to listen their perspective, when you try to listen their opinion, right, about something, I'm not saying that you have to agree whatever they are saying, but I'm just saying that you have to respect and you at least have to listen what the other people are saying, right? So the first thing, or I would say the first tip for good communication in the workplace is you have to avoid dominating the conversation. What we do when we communicate, we try to dominate the conversation. This is the basic human nature that whenever we are having a conversation, we try to dominate that conversation. Especially, when we talk to our friends, relatives, we have opinion about everything. And when we share our opinions, we never accept others' opinions. We just try to dominate the conversation and just want to win the debate, right? Though it's not a debate. So this tip is particularly for extroverted behavior types. So you don't have to converse basically to avoid to dominate the conversation, right? So you should not, because it's not a debate, you're having a conversation at your workplace. So you should not try to dominate the conversation. You should not try to prove yourself right all the time. Try to listen to other people, their perspective, their opinion. They might be wrong. I'm not saying that you have to accept everything passively. No, you just have to listen to them. And listening doesn't mean that that you're just listening to them and then you're listening to give your reply or response to that thing. By listening to other people speak, you will involve them. Let them speak, let them finish, and then you can share your perspective, share your opinion, share your thing about that. So this will mean you are not speaking at them and dominating the conversation. You're listening to them, and then you're putting your point across. Right. So listening carefully, listening actively, listening empathetically is very, very important when it comes to effective communication, and especially at the workplace and in professional life. You have to listen to others and you should not try to dominate the conversation. And you should not listen to answer, you should not listen to react, you should not listen to how I'm going to reply, how I'm going to respond, right? I'm listening because I'm waiting for my turn, what I'm going to say next, right? So listen to understand their perspective, listen to understand their point of view. So this is the basic rule, right? And this is not an easy process. Listening is something that you have to practice. And listening with empathy, listening with understanding, listening with, when you try to put yourself into their shoes and try to understand their situation and then listen, so things will change, right? And try to be, if you really want to be an effective communicator, you have to be trustworthy and honest. When you are trustworthy and honest, communication becomes a lot less complicated thing, especially at the workplace. Not only in your professional life, but I believe in personal lives as well, right? So when you don't have to think about what you're going to say wrong, and you don't have to worry about uncovering a secret or a dishonest statement or argument. If you remain open, if you remain honest, and if you remain worthy of trust, you will have a much easier time communicating with others. So be trustworthy and be honest, right? And after being a good listener, listening with empathy, listening with understanding, right? You have to be trustworthy and honest. You have to be very, clear. You have to be very open. You have to be very honest and worthy of trust when it comes to communication, right? And the environment. You cannot change the environment, I would say, but yes, you can avoid a tense environment at all cost. When you communicate information to people in a large group, their mindset and their behavior can change for the worse. So this can be down to being one of the group. That means that instead speak with the people on a one-to-one basis. This will allow you and them to give your undivided attention and iron out any issues or conflicts that you might arise or you will have consequences, right? So it's better that you should not have any one-to-one conversation to avoid the tense environment, right? So you should have a group, a large group when you're communicating any information. So that means the miscommunication won't happen then. Intend to understand. When your intentions are not to understand anybody, I believe this is a very powerful idea. When you listen, the concept is the concept is listening to actually understanding what is being said rather than listening just to respond with what you want to say. Most of the time, 90%, I would say, that 95%, I would say, that we listen to actually understand, not actually to understand what's being said. We listen just to respond with what actually we want to say, how we are going to respond, how we are going to react, right? If you're being honest, most of the time you guys also listen just to, you wait for your turn, or you wait for your, turn, that what you are going to say next. You listen for that. You never listen to learn. You never listen to understand. You never listen to understand others' perspective, right? And when it comes to professional communication or communication at the workplaces, so we are not going to have, only the verbal communication, only the one-to-one or the personal communication or the oral communication. We are going to have written communication as well, especially email, right? So when communicating face to face, the meaning and words you use to convey your message can become lost in translation, you know. So your passion and emotion is something which sometimes get in the way when you say something in front of somebody. So your nonverbal also helps your message to, you know, uh, easier for the other person to understand. But when you write an email, right, sometimes you're not, your intention is not that, or your the tone of your email, sounds rude or something like that. And so make sure that when you are communicating via an email, right, so before, sending an email, you should sit and think of a well thought out message, that, whatever you have written, the words that you have used are appropriate, the tone of the whole message is right, right? And so this removes the emotion and allow you to focus on the facts, that whatever you have written, it's not rude, it's not direct, it's not, it actually what you meant, what you are trying to convey. So make sure that, especially when you are communicating with emails or letters, so your tone should be appropriate according to your message. Whenever you are having a conversation at your workplace, ask for feedback from others. We never ask for feedbacks. Feedback is actually a truthful realization. That means when you realize that you have, made some mistake, or you did some, something wrong, or you said something wrong. Until unless you won't ask for the feedback and you won't receive a feedback, you won't be able to understand that whether you have done something wrong or you have said something wrong. So when it's all said and done, one of the best ways you can learn to communicate more effectively, especially at your workplace, is to ask for feedback. Take some time to speak to your subordinates, to your co-workers, right? So you communicate them with, frequently. So you can find out how you can, if you find out that, the feedback is not what you expected. So with your feedback, you can understand and you can learn that maybe I am not an effective communicator. The people are not understanding the way I want them to understand. So you can improve your communication in the workplace. Sometimes all it takes a few suggestions. You can take the few suggestions, you can take the feedback, and you'll be on the road to create a better understanding with someone else, right? Now, why the effective communication won't happen? You try to across your intentions, emotions, everything clearly, but sometimes it doesn't happen. People misunderstood you, right? Or they decode you wrongly. So there are certain barriers in their listening, or maybe the medium that you are using to convey that message is not right. So what are those barriers which actually affect the listening, right? Sometimes it can happen with you as well, that when you are listening to somebody, right, you're focusing, when we listen, actually we waiting for the first thing that we wait for our response, we wait for our turn, right? We cannot be fully attentive to what the speaker is saying, what the other person is saying. We are busy in our own thoughts, we are waiting for our own turn. Sometimes we experience that this information is overloaded, right? Already. So when you try to mix your background information on what you already know about this thing, and when you try to mix these two, you won't focus on the relevant information, and the central points that are being conveyed, you might miss them. Sometimes you're busy in criticizing the speaker, so you might be distracted by critical evaluations of the speaker, that she's not saying this right, she's saying this wrong. So when you are criticizing the speaker, your focus on what they are saying, the message, rather than the messenger. So your focus point should not be the messenger, but it should be the message, what he or she is trying to say. Sometimes you get distracted by emotional noise. We react emotionally to certain words, certain concepts, and certain ideas. And to I would say, myriad of other cues, you take some other cues from the speaker, like their appearance, their non-verbal gestures, their non-verbal cues, right? So try to make a conscious efforts to quiet your own, actually be quiet and quit all your, emotions, like thinking about what he or she is wearing, how they are dressed up, so instead of focusing on their appearance or some non-verbal cues or on gestures or postures, you should make a conscious effort to listen to their words, what they are saying. Sometimes you get distracted by external noise. Your audible noise may be extremely distracting. Your phone is ringing, you're getting messages on your WhatsApp. So that's why all these factors are responsible. Because of them, you're not able to listen actively, and the other person also is not able to get your message properly, because they are also distracted by some external physical factors, psychological factors, right? Physical difficulty, like physical factors I have just said. Physical factors like feeling physically unwell or experiencing any pain, like you are having headache and it's too hot, or it's making very difficult to listen actively because you're not interested, you're not in a mood to listen. This is something related to psychology. This is a psychological factor. Physical factor, it's too hot, it's too humid, right? You're not feeling well, you're experiencing discomfort. So it is very difficult for the listener to pay attention or to listen effectively or actively, right? So you may wish to communicate that this is not a good time and reschedule the discussion. So if you think that you're not feeling well, you're not in a mood to listen, mood you cannot say at the workplace, but yes, if you think that physically or psychologically you are not in a mood, or you're not in a mood, or you're not in a position to discuss, or this is not a good time, so you can reschedule the discussion, right? These are the barriers, the physical barriers, the psychological barriers. Then what all strategies we can apply to listen actively to somebody? Can we do that? Any strategy when you try to force yourself, or because listening is something that we consciously choose to do. So any strategy or any trick that you apply when you really want to listen to somebody? Any trick that when you really want to listen to somebody? So any trick, any strategy you apply, how you gather your thoughts, how you collect your thoughts, and how you bring your concentration back. What all things you do when you really want to listen to somebody? क्या करते हैं आप? जब किसी को सच में हम सुनना चाहते हैं, and our thoughts are wandering, we are thinking about something else, we are daydreaming, or when we are listening, we are waiting for our turn. When we are listening, we are actually distracted by our phone. So what else, what do you do when you actually want to listen, but it's tough? Listening is not something which is very easy. Focus on words. Okay, Vivek, anybody else? Anybody personal strategy that you apply? Be present as much as possible. Okay, just turn off all the distraction. The biggest distraction that we all have is our phone, right? So if we switch it off or put it on a silent mode, then active listening can happen, right, Anushka? So just turn off all the uninstall Instagram. Yes, because we keep getting messages on Insta or WhatsApp, and we all the time we want to check. Right, so these are the distractions that actually stop the effective listening. Right, so these are the strategies that we can follow or we can apply. So I would say that when you are your intention, or you want to promote active listening, right? When you have a goal in your mind that I have to understand this, right? Whatever the speaker is saying, I have to understand this. So you force yourself, right? And similarly, when you clearly communicate the listener's interest, right? So like you said, the focus on the other person. When you don't focus on the words and you focus on the other person, their thoughts and their feelings, so consciously focus on quieting your own internal commentary. हमारी एक अपनी खुद की commentary चलती रहती है. When we listen something, हमको अगर उस बारे में थोड़ा सा पता है तो we try to mix the background information, और जो भी हमारी अपनी commentary चल रही है, we try to keep mixing. So step away from your own concerns to think about, those of the speakers. अगर speaker के बारे में if you are, कुछ thoughts आ रहे हैं, कुछ judge कर रहे हैं आप उससे, so keep all those concerns of yours, जो internal commentary है, so keep it aside. Give your full attention to the speaker. The first thing that we can do, like you said, that we should focus on the words. Very good. Look, pay attention to non-verbal messages without letting yourself be distracted. Notice body language and non-verbal cues to allow for a richer understanding. Because sometimes half of the message is conveyed with the non-verbal cues, non-verbal message, right? So I would not say that you should ignore or you should avoid the non-verbal, right? But for a better understanding, you should focus on the non-verbal communication as well, or the speaker's non-verbal gestures, postures also. Because always remember, the active listeners need to communicate to the speaker that they are involved in giving the person. How you will give the speaker message, or the person who's who's saying something, or the speaker, how you will give that person a message that you are listening. You're actively listening. Yes, Vanshika, open-minded, yes. And how you will give the person, because I can't see you, so how you will give me the message that, yes, ma'am, we are listening. We are here. We are all ears. When we will be in the class, so how you will give the message that you are listening, responding. How you can respond? Only with the words? Giving response. Yes, Shalu. Vanshika, feedback. Yes. Respond to all the little details. If not all the little details, how non-verbally can you give somebody, any speaker, a response that, you are listening? Nodding head, yes, Akansha, that's right. When you're sitting and when you lean forward, or when you nod your head and when you make an eye contact, that all these non-verbal gestures actually give the speaker message that you are listening, you're present. Eye contact, yes, nodding, eye contact, when you lean forward, right? So that means you're listening, you are actively listening. Sometimes you can also fake your non-verbals by smiling. Yes, if something is there to smile, definitely you can smile, right? So can you fake your non-verbals? Can you show the speaker that you are listening, though you're not? Yes, we can fake the non-verbal cues, and the speaker can decode that you guys are listening, or I'm listening, or they are listening, just by if they are nodding their head, and though they are not understanding anything. If they are making eye contact, but mentally they are somewhere else, their thoughts are wandering here and there. Yes, by just staring on them, you don't have to stare. You just have to make an eye contact, right? So staring and making an eye contact are different things, right? So we can also fake the non-verbals. All right, so look, pay attention to the non-verbal gestures also of the speaker. All right, then listen for the essence of the speaker's thought, like details, major ideas, their meanings. I'm not saying that you have to focus on each and every word, but it's just the essence of speaker's thought, the details, the major ideas that they are sharing, the meanings. So try to seek an overall understanding of what the speaker is trying to communicate. You don't have to pay attention on each and every word. That being an active listener or effective communicator, you have to listen each and every word by word, and you have to memorize it, and you have to retain everything in your memory for so long. No, you just have to seek an overall understanding of what the speaker is trying to communicate. Rather than reacting to the individual words or terms that they use to express themselves, it's better to try to understand the overall idea, overall essence of the speakers, what details, what thoughts they're trying to, share, or what ideas they're sharing. And I would repeat, I'm repeating it second time, and I keep repeating this thing: be empathetic. So being a listener also, being a good communicator also, being a good speaker also, you have to be empathetic. imagine how you would feel in their circumstances. So whenever you are listening to somebody, whenever you are listening to any speaker, and whenever you are having a conversation with anybody, be empathetic. Imagine how you would feel in their circumstances. Be empathetic to the feelings of the speaker. So while maintaining a calm center within yourself, you need not to be drawn into, I would say, all of their problems or issue. I'm not saying this. I'm just saying that just try to understand their perspective. As long as you acknowledge what they're experiencing, you will definitely are not going to react at least, or you will be whatever you respond, or whatever you'll do, it won't ruin your relationship, and you won't have regrets, or you don't have consequences, right? Because when you are empathetic, you try to put yourself into others' shoes, and then you react or respond accordingly. And then to be the strategy that you can use to be an effective communicator and stop all the barriers and be an active listener, ask questions. Like you said, feedback. Use questions to clarify your understanding. If you're not understanding anything, you can ask questions. You can demonstrate interest in what is being said. If any speaker said something, so you can show your interest by, you know, uh, you can show non-verbally as well, and by asking questions on that topic, you can show your interest. Sorry. You can also paraphrase. If you don't have any specific question to ask, like if you don't know what to ask, you don't have any specific question, so you may choose to repeat back to the speaker in your own words. Like sometimes you can we call it paraphrasing. I'm not asking you to summarize whatever the speaker said, or it's just you can paraphrase it. Right. If you don't have any question to ask, you can paraphrase or you can repeat back to the speaker. Not every word, in your own word, whatever you have understood with the message or with the conversation, you can paraphrase it. What is your takeaway? What you have taken away in order to, so that the speaker also understand that, you understood. So uh, if you really want the speaker to clarify any point, you can do that. If you mention anything wrong, so the speaker will clarify it. Right. And then sometimes you listen with a perception, stereotyping, being judgmental. So be careful not to hold on to any preconceptions about people or about things or about the topic. So we often have a tendency to see what we want to see, right? Everybody has this tendency that हम वही देखते हैं जो हम देखना चाहते हैं. So forming an impression from a small amount of information or experience and assuming that to be highly representative of the whole person or whole situation, do not be generalizing or stereotyping, right? And if you want accurate perception, I would say it's the biggest barrier. When you not invest time, you make assumptions, you ignore details, you ignore some, which actually, when you make assumptions and when you ignore details, it can lead to misconceptions. And when we fail to look into the depth or cause of the circumstances, we miss important details and do not allow yourself for the complexity of the situation. Right. So assumptions, preoccupied mind, your own thoughts, your background information, you're being judgmental, all these are barriers. And they stop you from active listening. And when you don't listen actively, you cannot be an effective communicator. Right? So Sara, effective communication starts with active listening. Right? Accurate perception. Analyze your own perception. Like I'm not asking you to create barrier perceptions. No. Create, ask questions, ask your perceptions, and think about how they are formed. कैसे आपने बनाया ये perception इस बारे में. Check in with others around your regularly, and be aware of your assumptions that you are making. अपने assumptions को you have to cross check. Like अगर आपने किसी colleague के बारे में you have created some assumption, and your perception is very different about that person. So cross-check it. Seek additional information and observe. You may just need to ask people if your perception are accurate about certain people, about certain, things. So you can cross-check it. and always work on improving your perception. एक ही perception लेके you cannot move forward. Increase your awareness of barriers to perception, right? So, and focus on others. This is develop your ability to focus on other people and understand them better by trying to gather knowledge about them, listening to them actively, and imagining how you would feel in their situation. ये सबसे important है, and it is difficult also because we never try to understand anybody's perspective. Right? So, and what are the barriers to effective verbal communication? These were the barriers for active listening, and now the barriers for effective verbal communication. Lacking clarity. When I'm saying something and I'm not clear with my own thoughts and with my intentions which I want to convey. Overly formal language. If I start speaking overly formal language, I start using jargons, right? Which actually obscure my message more than, it won't serve the purpose. I don't have to impress people, right? So do not try to impress people by using difficult words or overly formal language, jargons, right? It will make your message obscure and difficult. Instead of, people will get impressed, they won't understand. Your message won't be clear. So do not try to add, some difficult vocabulary to sound different. Use simple language, use clear language, right? And again, speakers who make unqualified generalizations, right? And they're not clear. So be careful not to get stuck in the habit of using stereotypes or making generalization about complex systems or situations. Right? Jumping to the conclusion. When we are listening or speaking something, and we jump to the conclusions. While we are listening, we jump to the conclusion. अच्छा हाँ ठीक है इस बारे में बोल रहे हैं, and this is something, ये end है, ये conclusion है. Do not jump into the conclusion and do not assume in the communication. So jumping into the conclusion while listening and listening with preoccupied mind, all these things are the barriers in your effective communication. Right? Dysfunctional responses, ignoring, not responding to a comment, or question quickly, all these things actually, stops your effective communication. Responding with an irrelevant comment. If you respond, if you give a feedback and you ask you give an irrelevant comment, one that is not connected to the topic at end, right? So will actually question genuine communication. That's not a genuine communication. So interrupting others while they're speaking also creates a poor environment for communication. This is the biggest thing because we are not patient, right? So to be an active listener, an effective communicator, we have to listen patiently, right? So we interrupt others while they're speaking. It creates a poor environment of communication. And lacking confidence. Lacking confidence can be a major barrier to effective communication. Shyness, difficulty being assertive. I hope you know assertive. Uh, I'm not saying that you should be passive or you should be aggressive. You cannot take as everything as it is. Like I'm passive. Whatever you say is right, right? And I'm not saying that whatever I say is always right. You have to accept it. So try to be assertive whenever you're having a conversation or communication. To be an effective communicator, you have to be assertive in your communications. I hope you know assertive, aggressive, and passive. Anybody? Aggressive? Can you tell me the difference? Because there is very fine line between being aggressive and being assertive. Anybody? Quickly, we don't have much time. Okay. All right. So in simple words, I would say aggressive means when I say I am right and I'm least bothered whether, you know, I'm okay, and I'm least better, aggressive, louder, sometimes disrespectful tone. Yes, Yogesh. No, not imagination. It's something when I, believe that I'm okay and I'm least bothered when you are okay or not. Whether you are okay or not, I'm okay and I'm happy. Right? This is something you're aggressive. You're being aggressive. And if you say like you're okay, I'm okay with it. अगर आप okay हो, आप जैसा बोलो वैसा ठीक है. आप okay हो, I'm also okay. This is being passive. And assertive is something I am okay and you are also okay. Something on the common page or common grounds. Assertive stressing on something by respecting others' opinion. Two, being assertive means that you are not compromising your things also, but you're not hurting others. So on common grounds, on win-win situation, when you reach any conclusion जिसमें आप सामने वाले को भी respect कर रहे हो equally. And being yes, right, Ali. Being passive means that when you let others take responsibility or let others make decisions, right? Absolutely, right? So your decisions are not important, your opinions are not important, then that means you're being passive. But when you are assertive, you respect yourself also and others as well. And being aggressive when you respect and when you think about only yourself and you are least bothered about others. Yes. Okay. So, what I was saying, yeah. So you have to be assertive, in your communication. So if you're lacking confidence, it if I say lacking confidence is the biggest barrier to effective communication. If you're shy, you don't put your ideas clearly. You're difficult being assertive. You have a low self-worth, right? And sometimes you're not able to talk about your needs. You are not able to talk about your opinions, your ideas, your thoughts, whatever you want, and you are not able to talk about all these things confidently because you have low self-worth, right? So all these things actually, it's a sign of lack of confidence. And so whenever you have a lack of confidence, you cannot communicate. Lack of awareness about your rights, about your opportunities, that what you deserve. Right. So in a given situation or the opportunities that you have, and you prevent yourself from, just because you are not able to express your needs openly. Right. So lacking confidence can be a major barrier to effective communication. It may be shyness due to difficulty being assertive, due to lack of, self-worth, or when you cannot talk about your, opportunities or your rights, or maybe you are not aware about your rights, right? So make sure that, you should communicate and you should not have shyness or difficulty being assertive, or you should know your rights and you should talk about your opinions and everything assertively, right? Focus on the issue, not on the person. Try to take everything, do not try to take everything personally. And similarly, express your needs, express your opinions in terms of the job at hand, right? Solve problems rather than attempt to control others. You cannot control others, you cannot control situations, you cannot control the other things. You can control your emotions, you can control your problems with effective communication. Rather than ignoring an employee who routinely, is disturbing you, you should, what you can do, right? So I'll be sharing some scenarios. We'll be discussing how we can apply, effective communication to solve problems. Empathize rather than, remain detached. Although I believe that professional relationship entails some boundaries when it comes to interaction with colleagues, it is important to demonstrate sensitivity and to really care about the people who work with you. If you don't care about them, it will be difficult for them to care about you. So when it comes to working together, that doesn't mean that there are boundaries, that you have to be professional also, but that doesn't mean that if you are being professional, so you cannot care about other people. You should really care about the people you work with. And all these comes under the effective communication. If you care about the other people, you will have a better communication with them and you will build relationship, right? So actually relationship, whether in your personal life or professional life, depends on your effective communication. Be flexible towards other. Allow for, others, allow other people their points of view, their open ways, how they're doing things, respect, diversity. When you have diversity, you have, creativity and innovations as well. Value yourself and your own experiences, but that doesn't mean that you should not value others. So be firm about your own rights, about your own needs, but do not undervalue yourself or encourage others to undervalue you. Right? So you have to undervalue yourself also, and you have to encourage yourself also and others also. But if you encourage, or if you demotivate yourself and undervalue yourself, so people are not going to value you. So to offer, your ideas clearly, you have to value yourself and your own experiences and your own rights, right? And try to use affirming responsible. So if you respond to other, so try to, do it in another ways, like acknowledge their experiences, acknowledge their efforts, thank them for their input, affirm their right to their feelings, even if you disagree sometimes. Sometimes if you don't agree with somebody, you can affirm their right, you can affirm their feelings. I'm not asking you to please everybody, but yes, you can respond to others in ways that you're acknowledging their experiences. You're just thanking them, you're appreciating them for their inputs, right? So to be an effective communicator, like if you ask open-ended questions to create a sense of understanding, right? When you ask open-ended questions, you give the chance to the speaker to explain further, to elaborate. So that means you're listening, you're interested. So very careful what you say, what you write or present before. You never know how to receive or understand it from different people. People have different backgrounds, they have different interests, so you really don't know how people are going to perceive it, how people are going to receive it. So you have to be very careful at your workplaces, in your professional life, that what you say, how you write, what you write, and how you're going to present your ideas, how you are going to present things. So get to know your audience before communicating. Suppose in your professional life, when you're communicating or you're having a conversation, you should know to whom you're having a conversation. Know your audience. बात करने से पहले किससे बात करना है उसको जानना is important. I'm not saying that you should know all the in and outs about that particular person. No, I'm just asking you that क्या position है, किस designation पे he or she is working, क्या उसके बारे में right? So get to know your audience before communicating. The person to whom you are having a conversation, at least understand what they are thinking and what they are feeling, or how they feel or how they think. So all the effective communicators, if I concluded, I would say that all the effective communicators can listen as much or more than they speak. This is the, among all the tips and strategies, whatever we have discussed, I would say that, active listening and empathetic listening. If you really want to be an effective communicator, you have to listen as much or more than you speak. The best listeners ask open-ended questions because it will create a sense of understanding for your message, right? Strong communication skills are very critical to your successful life. So people who have excellent communication skills are more likely to, foster good relations with their friends, with their family, with their neighbors, with their co-workers, with their subordinates. So you need excellent communication skills. And excellent communication does not only mean, it's not only about the language. I'm not saying the right grammar, the right sentences, the right vocabulary, the right intonation, the right pace, the right pause. No, it's about kab, kahan, kaise, kya bolna hai. That is excellent communication skills. Command over the language is a different thing. How grammatically you are correct, how you're forming the sentences, your pronunciation is correct or not, right? Your vocabulary, the context in which you are using the right or appropriate word, that all these things are different. But excellent communication skills and effective communication skills are, change your relationships in personal and professional life. Effective communication, principle of understanding the receiver, principle of clarity, principle of feedback. That's what we have discussed just now. Okay, and the principle of objective, to create awareness, to give information, to make announcement, to deliver some bad news, different type of tone, different type of intonation, different type of words you need, right? So principles of understanding the receiver, like I said, that you should know your audience, who's your receiver, the age group, the designation, the kind of relationship, the mindset of that person. You should know the receiver. Before saying or communicating your thing, your message, you should know your receiver. Do you know them before? What kind of relationship you share? Are they senior, junior, subordinate, client, right? So do you know what their needs and what they want? Why are they here? Why they are talking to you? What they need? What they expect? Right? So you should design your conversation, you should design your communication according to all these principles. You have to understand the receiver. Without knowing the understanding the receiver, you are not able to outline your conversation effectively. You can converse, you can have a conversation. And the principle of clarity, how you're formatting your message. There should be a very clear, well-designed message, keeping in mind the audience, keeping in mind the situation, keeping in mind the context. You have to design your message with clarity. What you need, what you need to understand the objective. You have to what goal you want to achieve, what you want to convey, what method you should use, what should be the right medium to convey that message. Feedback, you should give the opportunities of feedback, right, of suggestions, so that your audience or your listener can ask questions. If you are a listener, you should ask questions, open-ended or the close-ended. You should as a speaker, you should provide opportunity for questions, right? As a listener, you should ask questions, open-ended questions. When you ask open-ended questions, actually you give chance to the speaker to elaborate more, right? Clarify, ask for clarification. You can paraphrase it, like I said. When you paraphrase it, that means you're not summarizing it, you are explaining, or you are trying to repeat whatever you have understood from the from your perspective, from the speaker, whatever you have understood. Okay. Barriers we have discussed, we can have language barriers. If I'm speaking the language which is not understood by the person who's listening, right? So language can be a barrier. Physical barriers, the climate is not friendly, it's very humid, it's hot. There's so much background noise, there's so much disturbance. Psychological barriers, my thoughts are wandering, I'm in stress, I have some, problems at home. I'm not interested in whatever the speaker or the person is saying. I'm not interested because my mood is off. Cultural barriers, you know sometimes non-verbal cues or culturally they are very different, right? So you have to understand the cultural barriers as well. Kahin par koi non-verbal gesture respect hai, kahin par wo disrespect hai. So you should understand the cultural barriers also. Language barrier, if you're a speaker, if your receiver won't understand the same language, so you have to decide the common language, you have to choose the common language, you have to use the simple vocabulary, keep short, sweet, and simple. Do not try to impress your receiver or your listener by using difficult vocabulary or difficult sentences, right? Otherwise, your message will not be, properly conveyed. Physical barriers, maybe the place is, congested, or the place is inappropriate. The climate is not favorable. There's so much background noise. Psychological, your mood, you don't want to listen, you don't want to pay attention, you're daydreaming, you're thinking about something else, right? And then you have cultural barriers. You're from different country, you are from rural area, you are from urban area, you have different value system, right? And this is what I have discussed in the last session according to Mehrabin, that how he has divided the communication process. The tone of voice should be 38% and the spoken words are only 7%. अब तक हमें लगता था कि words are important. I gave you an example in the last session as well कि words का कोई value नहीं है, 7% value है, right? Verbal communication, language, words, grammar, clarity, pace, pitch, tone, the tone that we use, how clear we are, how, if we are making any grammatical errors in verbal communication. Non-verbal communication, we don't have exchange of words. We exchange body languages, postures, gestures, facial expressions, eye contacts, right? See, so closed, we have some closed non-verbal gestures and some open. So when when we cross our arms and when we listen to somebody, that means we are not open for the conversation, or we are being defensive. We're trying to defend ourselves, right? So if I put my hands back, and then start having a conversation, that means I'm being authoritative. right? You cannot put your hands in a pocket while having a conversation. That means maybe I'm, losing interest, or I'm looking very casual. So you can have different body gestures while body postures while you are having a conversation, while whether you're listening or speaking, right? So make sure that you should use the appropriate body language according to the situation. Facial expressions, you can convey so many things, your emotions with your expressions only. You can communicate your emotions with your face, with your expressions. If you're happy, it's a happy face, angry face, disgusted, frustrated, and afraid, right? So all the facial expressions can convey your emotions. The communication styles I have discussed. I am right, that means I'm aggressive. I'm least bother whether you are right or not. I am right, right? You are right, passive. I don't have any opinion, I don't have any choice, I don't have any, you know, my own thought or opinion about something. I'm accepting whatever you say. And I'm just dominating the conversation. Whatever I say is right, is correct. I'm being aggressive. And something in between is assertive, and there's a very thin line between being assertive and aggressive. All right, then aggressive, close minded, because when I'm aggressive, I dominate the conversation. I am close minded, I never listen to anybody. I'm a poor listener because I won't listen. I dominate the conversation, and I have the attitude that I know it all, or I know it already. Nothing new for me. When I use this body language, the index finger, when I point my index finger to anybody, it's aggressive, it's dominating, it's rude. So instead of pointing finger, you should use the open palm gesture. That means you show your palms. You should use this gesture. Can I have answers from there, right? Instead of pointing the index finger, you should use the open palms gesture. All right, so rigid posture, impatient, argumentative, and loud. Passive style, hesitant, always agree, whatever you say, whatever like feel, or where you are happy in. Fidgeting, like you have a pen and you start playing with it. So you're fidgeting. That means you're not interested, you're not interested, you don't have confidence, you don't have your own opinion, you never make an eye contact, you slouch, or you have a low self-esteem. So you hesitant. That means that you are your style of communication is passive. So effective communication is putting your message, putting your emotions, intentions clearly, effectively, and you have to be a good listener, active listener, empathetic listener, right?